What's happened to me?
We crashed.
Nurse Chapel was unhurt, but
You were healed.
Coming up, Spock is given life-saving medical treatment when an away mission shuttle accident critically wounds him.
Whoever did this seems to have made you human.
But his recovery turns his life upside down when he finds himself put back together as a human with a flood of hilarious emotions that he can't control.
Because T'Pring's mother, if she heard I was human, this could be a serious disaster.
whoa.
How does Spock cope with his new ill-timed reality in the midst of engagement ceremonies with his disapproving mother-in-law-to-be?
The models were telling me we have 24 hours. If we can't change him back, he's gonna be stuck like this.
It is a race against time to change Spock back to a Vulcan before his changes are permanent and his engagement to T'Pring is irrevocably broken.
All this and more.
Coming up on the Strange New Worlds edition of Energize.
Energize.
We're boldly going into the uncharted regions of the Star Trek universe before Captain Kirk.
You're listening to Energize, a Star Trek Strange New Worlds podcast, your source for in-depth analysis, colorful debate, and exciting discussions about the new adventures of Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew. I'm your host, Anthony McLemore.
And I'm Steve Truitt. In this week's episode, Spock confronts life as a human, a disapproving mother-in-law-to-be, and pent-up feelings for Nurse Chapel.
Here's a warp speed recap of Season 2, Episode 5 of Strange New Worlds, Charades.
Spock, during your upcoming visit, I have arranged to have our ceremonial engagement dinner.
Is it not too soon?
Gravitational radiation is headed right for us.
Maximum power to forward shields.
What's happened to me?
We crashed.
Nurse Chapel was unhurt, but
You were healed. Whoever did this seems to have made you human. What the
I've already spoken to T'Pring and to your family.
What did you tell them, Captain? Because T'Pring's mother, if she heard I was human, this could be a serious disaster.
Whoa.
These rituals have to go perfectly, and clearly I'm not Vulcan enough to pull that off.
T'Pring's mother is already skittish about the union.
Spock, you are a disappointment. You have turned your back on your planet and our daughter. Your father Sarek is correct to shut you out. You have failed him as a Vulcan and as a son.
All right, Steve, this week's episode continues the ongoing storyline of Spock and T'Pring.
Yeah, even though, this is an episodic, serialized show, we still have these through lines, and it is really great to see them come back together and deal with a new kind of problem, because they've had all kinds of problems, distance and all kinds of other things.
Invasion of the body snatchers, switch bodies, basically.
Switching bodies, all of that craziness.
Yeah, so, I mean, I have found it very interesting to delve into Spock's love life over the past 2 seasons, and here we are once again. But I thought that delving deeper into this constant struggle between Spock's human side of himself and his Vulcan side of himself, I think is a good thing, and it gives him more layers. He's not just a one note.
Yeah, I agree, and I've read a lot about this, and you and I, in between these episodes, we watch stuff on YouTube and we listen to other commentaries, and I read a lot of commentaries, and a lot of guys are saying, or girls are saying, hey, listen, this is too much emotion for Spock. He's not Vulcan enough, and I just gotta say, I don't necessarily agree. I think that they're handling Spock in the way he should have always been handled. Yes, he is a Vulcan, and yes, he has chosen to live the Vulcan way, but he has not done the Kolinar. He has not completely become Vulcan and purged all emotions, just like in the Kelvin timeline, he didn't do it either. And so you're going to have a Spock that has emotions and fighting with himself. We saw it in Amok, or Spock Amok, when he was fighting himself as a human, and now we see it fully in this episode, and I think it's exactly how we should see Spock.
And then to add some icing and a cherry on top, we're still dealing with the pent-up emotions, the will he, won't he with Nurse Chapel, which is a carryover from the Serene Squall. Yeah, which is awesome because, you know, you can see something with them and it's, you know, we've been waiting for them to act on this. We got a little bit of a little kiss, but it was all, you know, make-believe to get out of danger. But this episode's different. Yes, and so overall, you know, in this particular episode, we're seeing Spock, you know, grappling with being accepted by T'Pring's family and dealing with T'Pring's mother, T'Pril, her racism towards humans and condescension towards Spock's mother, and Spock having to come to terms with all that while battling a dilemma of his own. And so I thought there was a lot woven into this, and we're going to delve deep into it. Yeah, it was a great way to set the background for this struggle. I mean, this could have just been about Spock struggling with his issues, but to have it be on Vulcan with his future mother-in-law, it was, I thought, perfectly set up.
Christine Chapel's personal log. We're en route to the Vulcan system. Our mission? To survey the moon of Kirkov on the far side of the sector.
So we start with Nurse Chapel is heading to the Vulcan system. Let me start that one over. So the Enterprise is headed to the Vulcan system, and Nurse Chapel is heading to survey an abandoned moon that I guess was by a civilization called the Kirkovs. Yeah, they were there. They abandoned it. Yep. Yeah, they vanished eons ago, and they're investigating a strange energy anomaly on the surface. So at the same time, Nurse Chapel is also preparing for an interview for a 2-month-long fellowship to the Vulcan Science Academy, which the only person that I've ever seen, only human I've ever seen go through the Vulcan Science Academy is Michael Burnham in Discovery. Right, and that's obviously because it's a little bit of nepotism, right? She was Sarek's adopted daughter. I also had a bit of an eyebrow raise there, like, well, what is this all about? It could be because she's part of the Enterprise and, you know, excuse me, the Enterprise itself with, you know, the original Enterprise and Jonathan Archer and the whole Vulcan relationship with getting, you know, humans finally off Earth. Maybe that had something to do with it, but I definitely was like, well, yeah, how is she, are they even going to let her in? But how is she even given a chance to get in? Yeah, because here's the thing. I'm someone who completely, in real life, I adhere to a logical way of thinking, thanks to me growing up watching Star Trek. And I've always said that I think if people were more logical, and that's not to be devoid of emotion, but I think if more people were logical beings, I think a lot of problems we have wouldn't be there. But at the same time, even though Vulcans are very logical, they're also very condescending and snobby towards humans. So they always have been. We saw them right after First Contact, in the time between First Contact and Enterprise with Scott Bakula. You know, they were basically the humans' masters, and the humans were on the leash, and they're like, "You're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready." And they're like, "We're ready. Let us go." You know, and they've always been kind of the overlord in that way, in that condescending way. So what I love is we open the show with Chapel in this wonderful montage of preparing for this, and she's reciting all the information that she's supposed to know, and we keep cutting to it's La'an, and then it's Uhura, and then it's Dr. Mbenga, number one, and it's great. I loved it. Even the music they were playing, it was just cheery, and you're just like, boy, she's really committed to this.
What's our Corby's 3 principles of archaeological medicine?
1, medicine is always ancient and new, as culture's understanding of what medicine is changes over time.
Yeah, but the elephant in the room is, why isn't Chapel seeking Spock's help? The neighborhood Vulcan should be helping Nurse Chapel. I mean, it's the obvious thing, but she's not.
I don't get it. Your interview is with the Vulcan, so why aren't you practicing with Mr. Spock?
Oh, things are kind of weird between them.
But the answer is obvious, right? They're doing their best to avoid each other. He's engaged. She's in love. And also, I know that she has a different past, right? They kind of talk about her past with
other women actually too. So I'm sure she's just as conflicted there as well. I don't know.
Yep, but the big thing is everybody knows
this.
Yes.
Everybody knows it, right?
Yeah.
And you can't hide the way they look at each other, but it's really the way they don't look at each other, the way they avoid each other that everybody knows. And yeah, Spock, walks into the turbo lift when Mbenga's there, and he doesn't even look at her, but she kind of looks over at him, and Mbenga notices, and then he goes away, and it's just that really cheeky, very Star Trek-y TOS kind of humor, which I love.
Yeah, and then Mbenga just completely rolls his eyes like, oh my gosh, I'll just continue to do this. Ugh.
Everybody knows you guys love each other. Come on.
Science officer's personal log. The recent downtime en route to Vulcan has been most advantageous. I owe my success to Dr. Mbenga, who provided me with therapies to better control my emotions.
We hear Spock's log, and he states that Mbenga's therapies have helped him control his emotions, and he's exploring new interests. So we see Spock doing a bunch of things.
So can I stop here just for 1 second?
Yeah.
There's a I know you love this episode. There's a couple things that I'm going to discuss during this episode that I didn't like. And here's the first one. They did this in Enterprise when the Xindi came and attacked the Earth and killed Trip's sister. He was so upset about it that he had to get treatment from T'Pol called neuropressure.
That's when I was still watching. Yeah.
Yeah. That's about where I gave up. And, I need neuropressure to, it's like, dude, okay, your sister died. It's terrible. But like, we all knew what that was. That was just a setup for them to eventually, have sex together. And it was such a silly treatment. And now I'm wondering, Spock's a Vulcan. Why does he need Mbenga's treatment? Why doesn't he have his own set of treatments that he would think all humans wouldn't understand? This is a bit of a logic hole that I'm not a fan of.
But at the same time, we're talking about Spock as a half human, half Vulcan. So maybe Mbenga is the gateway to dealing with his human side of his emotions in a way that Vulcans wouldn't be able to advise him on. I don't know.
But yeah, I suppose. And again, it gives Mbenga something else to do, which is great because, TOS Bones never did anything, right? Well, I shouldn't say that really, but this doctor has been the most active doctor I've ever seen in Starfleet.
Yeah, but I guess it's a little more real than a one-note doctor. So I'll let that one go.
Okay. Yes, I know you are. And I got another one later. but Spock is, he's also nervous because he's got this reunification with T'Pring, and he's excited to see her, I think. Hard to tell. But he definitely is not excited to see his mother-in-law.
Spock, there is a situation I felt the need to apprise you of. During your upcoming visit, I have arranged to have our ceremonial engagement dinner.
A Vishal dinner? Is it not too soon?
Yeah, she definitely does not approve of Spock, clearly, because he's, half human, half Vulcan. And, I think that plays into, the ongoing issues of interracial, relationships that we have in our own reality.
Yeah. Even he's a half breed, although you wouldn't know. You look at him, he's got the ears and the eyebrows. He's very logical, but everybody knows he's half human and they treat him that way. He's this, outcast kind of guy, and it's too bad. I never more have I really seen it played out than in this episode.
Oh, most definitely. That's what made this episode, really interesting for me. So, Pike informs Spock that he'll be traveling to Vulcan with a passenger, and that is Nurse Chapel, for which he is like, oh, crap.
So, obviously, they've got to go, and I don't remember exactly why it's the two of them in the shuttle. What happened there? Why were they chosen?
Well.
Oh no, he's. Oh no, because it makes sense. Because he's going to Vulcan to see T'Pring, and she's going for the test.
Right, exactly. That's right. It made complete sense. So why not? You would send the two of them. And so they're on their way, and they detect an energy anomaly on Kirkov, and the two get sucked into it.
Gravitational radiation is headed right for us.
Maximum power to forward shields.
Forward shields at maximum. My systems are crashing.
Steering is compromised.
This is great because it's rare that you see in sci-fi shows a species that has left somewhere, abandoned something. They did it in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. She arrives at this place and the people who built the tunnels are long gone. And I love that. It's like, who did this? We don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll come back. So these people are gone. But there's this energy wave. And of course, they start to head right toward it because they're getting sucked into it. It's kind of like a mini tiny little black hole. And there's this really interesting moment where they're just about to hit it. And the whole inside of the shuttle lights up, and Nurse Chapel just turns to Spock and just says, Spock, like, what's going to happen? And then boom, it's a whiteout.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, we're waking up and Spock's in sickbay.
Yep. And he's told that there's a shuttle crash and he was injured and healed, but everybody's acting awkward.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm thinking it's a dream, right? He's in some alternate reality. But then immediately I'm thinking, oh, yeah, something happened. His ears got ripped off or something.
Yeah, and so the camera pulls back, he lifts up, and, you know, it's like, boom, he's got human ears. And I'm like, oh, crap, what the hell?
Yeah. And this goes to the first break. He just goes, what the f... And they go to break, and it was just excellent.
Yeah. I thought that was really, really cool. And so, you know, obviously this poses a lot of issues for Spock. You know, at that point, I didn't know if this was just appearance or the full Monty is in terms of human emotion. So this could mean
this is why I was like, maybe this is a dream. Right? This could be a Scrooge type of thing where he goes through this whole thing and then wakes up and he's Spock again and he's learned something. So what does this mean now if he's human? Well, is he more a suitable match for Chapel and not for T'Pring, or can T'Pring accept him? We know her mother's not going to. And therein lies the conundrum here for this episode. They set it up great.
Yeah, bum, bum, bum. So after we go through our show open, we're all left hanging with our mouths hanging wide open. So we find La'an and Una, aboard the shuttle. They're scanning it, and they kind of answer the question. Apparently, the shuttle crashed, and it was literally put back together almost exactly like it was. And this mirrors Spock being healed or put back together just as the shuttle was. Right. And so La'an finds some alien tech, which is basically like a calling card that was left behind. And La'an and the bridge crew try to make audio contact with a Kirkovian rep. It's kind of like a service was rendered and a card was left behind. And they basically say Spock was healed or repaired, if you want to put it in that.
Well,
those
I think that the term they used it's something along the lines of corrected.
Yes.
Right. We found an anomaly with him and we corrected it. Now, here's where my big problem is. Okay, you ready for this?
Yes.
It's on a moon near Vulcan.
Yes.
Spock is the Vulcan in the ship. Chapel is non-Vulcan. As far as the Kirkovians know, Spock is the normal one, and Chapel is the one that's not right, because they must know Vulcans because they're right near Vulcan. So I think the big miss here was that they should have changed Chapel. Now, if they did that, we wouldn't have the same issues as the half-breed stuff. However, imagine if Chapel were changed and not Spock, and suddenly she's Vulcan, because that would have been the logical correction to make. All we've ever seen is Vulcans. That guy's a Vulcan. She's not. We fixed her.
Exactly.
I think that would have made it more interesting, more twist.
Agreed. And that was a plot hole that I did see. I was just like, wait a minute, we're near Vulcan. Hey, why haven't the Vulcans been investigating the Krakowians anyway? That was the thing that I thought.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was one thing that bothered me. But outside of that, then I started to delve into the story as presented, and so we find out that Spock is not only appears to be human, but he has taken on human emotions and behavior.
Well, it's wonderful because we get to see, this is my first time seeing Ethan Peck as anything other than Spock traditionally. I wasn't aware of him as an actor before, and to see him smile and light up and get hungry and act like a petulant child and have emotions and ask questions and get excited about food and smells, and just his range of facial expressions. I think he's been dying to do this for 2 seasons. And I'm sure he went to the writers and said, thank you, because he just crushed it. I so enjoyed him in this episode, just having fun with the human Spock.
I've already spoken to T'Pring and to your family.
What did you tell them, Captain? Because T'Pring's mother, if she heard I was human, this could be a serious disaster.
Whoa.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I totally was like, this is really, really cool. And I laughed. I thought it was funny. And I was just like, this is a different take. And I think it was a good avenue to explore by the writers. So, meanwhile, Chapel is having her meeting with the Vulcan Science Academy rep, and true to form, she's being patronized by the Vulcan.
Hi, I'm Christine. Apologies for the delay.
I read your essay, Miss Chapel, and frankly, I'm not impressed.
Right, and he's just like, if you pass, which is highly doubtful, blah, 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 no humans ever died. It's just that whole thing, and it's a wonderful what's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of a mirror to how the Vulcans see the humans. And by the way, T'Pring's mother is beautifully set up. I mean, we don't see her for the first half of the show, maybe first 2/3, but we know everything about her, and we're scared of her.
Oh yeah, it was a great setup.
I was
just like, this woman's going to come in and she's going to be a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
She's a domineering force that's about to board the
so
ship.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So before this force of nature comes aboard the ship, Spock's mom boards the ship, and Spock greets his mother in the transporter room, wearing a skull cap.
Yeah.
Spock, I am so sorry for surprising you like this, but why are you wearing that silly hat?
It's not silly. It's regulation.
And she's like, what's with the cap? And he's like, it's regulation. It's fine. It's obviously very silly. I think I also had a small issue here with, like, she's been on Vulcan her whole adulthood. She knows Spock. She knows Vulcans. He was totally acting different, and she didn't really pick up on it, which I was surprised. I would think she'd notice immediately.
Yeah. I felt like she should.
But it was funny that he's wearing the hat, the awkwardness. That's what made it funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, I let that one slide just for the humor part of it.
Yeah.
You have to, everything can't be just so, like, spot on, or you wouldn't have a story. But I thought it was hilarious. Right. And so Spock's mom's like, listen, we have got to get this engagement dinner done. We have rituals we must do. And so now, the stakes have been set.
These rituals have to go perfectly, and clearly I'm not Vulcan enough to pull that off.
The situation between our 2 families is more tense than you realize. T'Pring's mother is already skittish about the union.
He's just freaking out because they've got to do all of these things to show that he's a true Vulcan.
Yes.
And he's not going to be able to do it.
Yeah, and now it has to be done aboard the Enterprise because of Spock's injuries. Yeah. Now they've moved it to the ship. And so Spock has to don Vulcan ears. He's learning how to control his emotions, and he's pushing his way through the rituals in preparation to fool T'Pring's parents.
So he spends a lot of time learning all of these rituals while he's trying to do his emotion. It's a lot going on for him, especially, this is a la Data when he gets his emotion chip. It's just a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's new, and some of it's fascinating, and some of it's terrifying, and he doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and I found it really funny when he's like with his crewmates.
I love logic. Notice how I move my eyebrow, but no other muscles in my face.
Do I really sound like that?
Yes.
He's with La'an, Ortega, Una, and Uhura, and they're basically trying to say how he speaks. And he's like, do I really speak like this? And they're like, yes.
Yeah, and it's good humor. This whole episode had humor, led furiously by Ethan Peck, who just, he went from teenager to scared kid to angry, whatever, just super great. But all of this is just so overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's completely overwhelmed, and it's just too big of a task. I mean, he completely implodes. But here's the problem. They have 24 hours to change Spock back before he's locked into place. And I was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, nothing makes a good episode like a ticking clock. They discover, this is Nurse Chapel who's going through this effort to try to find a cure for Spock. Again, an interesting choice here because Chapel's the one who's working on it and Mbenga's not. Isn't it usually the doctor that would be leading this? That kind of threw me a little bit. Can you explain that to me?
Well, it seemed like he was assisting,
But he's the doctor.
Yeah, but I just feel like, for story purposes, Nurse Chapel is doing this feverishly as he, and she's connected to him, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense for the story. Just sometimes they color outside the lines a lot in this show in particular. There's not a lot of real adherence to real protocols. I think Pike runs a very loose ship, but it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been easy to fix. It was just, started with him being, and then jumped to Chapel just to establish that the dock is the dock. And she's, they could have tag teamed it a little bit and then landed on her. But that's just me.
But you're right. But what it actually does is it gets Chapel in charge. It's for her character because she'd love to have Spock as a human. They would be so connected, but there's something that misses Spock and she wants him cured. And she's fighting for it to the point where she's like convincing Ortegas and Uhura to go with her, like to abandon the rules again, get on a shuttle and go back and try to see if they can convince these aliens somehow to change Spock back. And they're like, dude, I don't know. And she's like, please, we have to try.
Yeah, and she gets them, persuades them to do that. And, this whole notion of Spock trying to fool T'Pring's, family, I'm hoping that, Chapel could come up with a solution before a required mind meld has to occur.
Yeah, because he was trying to fake that
away.
Too. Yeah, wasn't he like he had his hands on his mom's face? He's like, "Your mind to my mind, my mind." It's like really screaming it out.
Yeah, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, dude! Yeah, you've really like crashed and burned here."
I've spent the last 2 days with my mother. I can stomach no more formalities.
I understand.
So T'Pring, her mom, and her father arrive on the Enterprise. And, T'Pring is like, literally gets there a second before her mom does, and she's already frustrated with her mother.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And when T'Pring's mom arrives, I mean, her behavior is noticeably different from her husband.
Yeah, she's obviously
the boss.
Buttoned down. She's the boss. And the husband is just like, whatever you say, dear. Kind of a typical kind of relationship. The Vulcans, hey, Vulcans, they're just like us.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it seemed like every time the father, said something that was like very nice or he was open to something, he was immediately corrected and shut down. And then he would just fall in line.
Well, yeah, and Pike, who, by the way, takes a back seat for the third time this season. Don't forget that. That's a third episode out of 5 that he's not the main guy, who's cooking in his plate. He's making the food, and he goes, "Here's a traditional Vulcan dish." And the father tries it. He goes, "Oh, it's really good." And she's like, "No, the twists are wrong, and you didn't do this right, and this isn't fresh." And he's like, "You're right, it's not good. Sorry." Yes,
yeah, it was just like slap, slap, slap. Yeah, it just at every turn.
Biatchy.
And I was already like frustrated with her. I couldn't stand her.
Yeah, she sucked.
These quarters seem quite comfortable. They will suit our needs for the Vishal ritual.
They are merely adequate, and they carry an unfortunate odor. We all know what it is.
So Truitt constantly uses every moment to badmouth Spock about his heritage and how he abandoned his people for Starfleet, and how his own father, who Spock doesn't talk to, was correct in his criticisms of Spock.
Yeah.
And Spock got
and that's
pissed.
why they don't speak. Yeah.
And walked out.
Well, yeah, and he has to excuse himself because he's really upset. And it's like, how much more can he take? A Vulcan would look at it like, your criticisms are illogical or misplaced. But he's just like, no, you're hurting my damn feelings. And again, this is, to me, I think the Vulcans use logic as an excuse to be better than everybody else. Their emotions run deeper than humans do. We know this about them. And so maybe this, like Sarek has said, logic offers us a path around that. But I think it's also used as a crutch to be able to be holier than thou. And I think that's garbage.
Exactly. And it was evident all the way through Truitt's mannerisms and what she said. It was just evident, and it was actually pretty disgusting. I was like getting pissed for Spock's mom. I was pissed for Spock. I'm like, how dare you talk to them like that?
And here's another funny little thing about that is usually it's the son's mother that's the real jerk, because it's like, this is my son, you're taking my son, no woman's good enough for my son. But we see it here with the Vulcan mom. And I think this is beyond hiding behind logic. I just think she's a bitter old lady.
Oh, exactly.
Maybe it's
she just doesn't think Spock's good enough because his mother's human.
Your people, remediated. Only you didn't fix him correctly, and I'm trying to, but I can't without your help.
And so Chapel goes to appeal to the Kirkovians. I'll always get tongue twisted on that.
Just say Kevorkian. It'll be easier. So she's talked Uhura and Ortegas into going back into the anomaly, and they're like, well, you got to die somehow, right? And of course Ortegas, who's a great pilot, finds the one little slot that they can get into that won't kill them, but actually take them inside the anomaly, which is this space-time kind of thing. It's kind of like going inside the black hole, and they put all the shields forward and they go in there. And they get in there, and they're actually safe inside. And it's this weird kaleidoscope, little underwater Aquaman type world.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, let us get the person who actually did the fixing.
Yeah, because, Blue shows up, and they're like, hello, I'm Blue. And like, where's Yellow? Yellow's not here. It's like, would you like to leave a message?
Yeah, that was pretty hilarious to me. It was like his customer service.
Yeah, that was really funny.
During the accident, the other being diverted the shields away from himself to protect you.
You what?
He chose to protect you at the risk of his own life. Can you explain? What is your relationship to this being?
But they reveal that that Spock, in that moment when the shuttle was about to crash, that Spock diverted the shields to protect Chapel, and that's why he was gravely injured.
Right, and that's the point where I wanted to hear something along the lines of, no Vulcan would do that. That's not logical, and so therefore he must have had an anomaly, and that's why we made him into human, because he was obviously, defective. That's when you see Christine Chapel finally actually showing all of us, damn, I think I love this guy. And that's when the other two go, would you just admit it already? You're into him.
Right, and that was following the being asking, what is the relationship between Spock and Chapel? Because they weren't going to do it, because that request, that customer service request, usually comes from somebody who is directly related or tied to the person in question.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship? Somehow she says the right thing, because we cut back to the rituals.
Spock, you are a disappointment. You have turned your back on your planet, your people, your family, and our daughter.
So we're back on the ship, and it's time for the big final moment. Spock has passed everything. He's carried that pot of tea. You know, he turned his back and he made that funny face, and he turned around. He's all calm. He's accomplished everything, but now it's time for the mind meld. And, you know, there's been no change. And Pike, again, who I think is a very good comedic actor, his faces were fantastic in this episode. He's like, oh, wait, there's an Earth custom too. We have to do an Earth custom. It's called Charades. And the father's like, tell me about this Charades. And he's like, well, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
You pick two words and you sounds like, and he's like, sounds like ear. And he's like, no. And he's trying to, but it was a really good diversion for a second, because that's all they needed.
Yeah, and Chapel does show up in the nick of time before we have to play this painfully obvious diversion out.
Why did you do it? On the shuttle? You moved the shields to save my life?
It was the logical choice.
This is perhaps my favorite moment of the season. Is he's saying, look, I appreciate you doing this. And she's like, you saved me. And he's about to say,
why did it? Well, she asks first. She says, why did you do it? Why did you save me?
And she wants to hear it. But the truth is, if she knows if she hears it, that the game changes.
Right.
Okay? And she's not going to be a homewrecker. This is why I love this. It was so beautifully written and acted. She asks a question that she doesn't want to hear the answer to.
He's about to say it.
He stumbles through the answer. And before he says it, she does. This is the gift of the Magi, okay? Where he sells his comb, or his watch, so he can buy a brush for her hair. She cuts her hair so she can buy a crystal for his watch, right?
Yeah.
He saves her life, and now she's saving his. Before they could kiss, or he tells her he loves her, he spares her that. She spares him that and gives him the hypo spray and puts him right back to Spock. And we see in that exact moment Spock go from human Spock back to Vulcan, and it's a visceral transformation. And I just thought it was an incredible moment.
Yeah. And the next moment, was one of my favorites, because I was already like angry at T'Pring the whole time.
I had my doubts, Spock. Your Vulcan nature is diluted, so it must have been challenging to hold on to your logical side. I am impressed that you achieved this despite your handicap.
So Spock completes the mind meld portion of the rituals, and T'Pring acknowledges, hey, Spock, you completed it, and you made it through it, but you did this despite your handicap. And I could just hear the echoes of J.J. Abrams when Spock is before the Vulcan Science Academy, and they say, it's a wonder that you were able to complete this despite your disadvantage. And he's like, to what advantage do you speak of? And it's like, your human mother. And she basically
Your
did
human
that.
mother. Yeah. That's exactly right. That's how everybody felt about it.
And so Spock, even though he's back to being himself, that didn't sit well with him. And you can see that he got pissed. And he defended his mother and pushed back on the notion that his human side is a handicap.
And he did it in a Vulcan way, but I think he wouldn't have done it if he hadn't had that 24-hour human experience. Something about him is changed, I think, forever. Even if he does the colon R, he'll always have that memory. He can't get rid of that.
I am confused that you did not feel comfortable telling your own fiancé about your condition.
Later, T'Pring and Spock are together, and she expresses her confusion that Spock didn't share the injury with her. And I was with her on that. I mean, if you're really in love, and it seems like T'Pring has been very accommodating and very accepting of Spock, and doesn't have an issue with him being half human. And Spock didn't have faith or confidence enough in their relationship to share this injury and this change in him with her, and I thought that was bad on him.
Yeah, and not only that, she points out, you basically told everyone else but me. And, and I was trying to get into the head of Spock. Well, I think there's one of two things going on. One, he didn't want to give her more stress with the mother, or he really maybe was liking being a human, and he thought maybe the half-human of him was too much for T'Pring already, and if he was fully human, she'd reject him. Maybe that was part of it.
Yep. So then T'Pring basically, says that she wants space. She's disappointed.
Yeah.
And they want a break. So it's sort of a split.
It's a Ross and Rachel thing. Ross and Rachel in space. We're on a break. Exactly. What does that mean? I think that it means you're going to see this love triangle for the next 3 years.
And maybe the fact that T'Pring is on ice allows Spock to explore the relationship with Chapel. So, speaking of, Chapel is meeting with the Vulcan Science Academy rep.
Miss Chapel, I'm calling to let you know that we have chosen not to offer you a fellowship. You are welcome to apply again if you decide that is an appropriate use of your time.
He basically said you didn't make it, but then she piques his interest by telling him about the experience with the Krakovians, and now he wants to talk, but then she basically disses him back and says, no, I don't need to be with you guys.
I just got a intergalactic cure from a bunch of interdimensional aliens, and I did that in a 24-hour period. And I think I'll share that with, Starfleet. I don't need you guys. And he's like, It was
and then
nice.
she cut him off.
Yeah, it cuts him off. Yeah, and that's a great lesson for girls. It's a great lesson for people. There's a lot going on in that one without hitting us over the head with it. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, I loved it. I love giving people their comeuppance.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, problem. Every week I'm falling in more and more for Chapel. I just love her. She's cute, good actress. I love her character.
You have a crush.
She's awesome. Yeah, a crush, no.
Crush
yeah,
groove.
maybe. Yeah, maybe. She's not my hall pass, though. She's not my hall pass.
Okay.
But thank you. Then we go back to Spock and his mom. And
I thought this was a great moment.
You were shunned by Vulcan mothers.
But you were happy. And her judgment was a sign of their own weakness, not ours.
And yet, I see now what you gave up, what you chose to live through as a human on Vulcan.
A great moment, because not only because he finally is able to see what she chose this life. Sarek was the ambassador to Earth. She married Sarek. It was logical for him, but she moved to Vulcan and chose the Vulcan way and raised a half Vulcan child and spent her whole life being scorned. And wow, I think Spock's finally, and this is another thing about kids.
And just, had more respect and admiration for his mom, because having gone through this brief experience, he realized what she went through his entire life. And I thought that was great. I think back to moments with my dad, and I can think of lots of complex things, but I can also think of the very simple things. Like I went home one time and had too much buttered popcorn, and I got sick in the parking lot after the movie, and I was puking in the parking lot. And here's my 70-something-year-old dad, comforting me as if I were, 6, 7 years old. Wow. And it just reminded me in that moment. I'll always remember it because it just reminded me of the fact that my dad has always been my dad.
Well, don't forget also that I comforted you when you got sick on that boat for my bachelor party. Because you were so sick. You were green.
Yeah,
you were as green as an Orion.
Period in cars. That's why I drive everywhere. Well, everyone, so they brought that one up. So yes,
that's right. That's another Anthony fun fact. Everybody,
there we go.
What were you coming to see me about?
to tell you that T'Pring and I have decided to take time apart.
How do you feel about that?
I am conflicted because I have feelings for someone else.
Spock has now elected to not be with T'Pring. He's alone, and he's reminded of Chapel, and he starts to go, we know, to his quarters, and he opens the door, and she's there, which was perfect. There's your rom-com for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was like, oh, my God, she's here. And I'm just like, all roads lead to something.
Yep. Right. So she comes in. He lets her know that they've, gone their separate ways, which is exactly what she was hoping for. But she's not here. She's not a homewrecker, right? She could have kissed Spock and said, don't go through this thing. She didn't. She gave him the shot and made him Vulcan so he could go through it. Dude, that's love, man. I loved it.
That's true love and that's true respect. And she respects. She respects.
Absolutely.
She loves him and she respects him above that she never, truly interfered. And I respect her for that. And so she asked him, how does he feel about it? And so Spock reveals he's conflicted and he's, he has feelings for someone else.
Well, here's the thing. A Vulcan expresses his feelings. I'm conflicted. That surprised me. Yeah, and he's like, I have feelings for someone else. And, we've all been there, right?
Yep. And he says he doesn't want to repress them anymore.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, let's go. And she just jumps right into it. And, you made a point before, and I agree. They're not stringing this out. They're going for it. They're not making us, the writers know they've got a lot up their sleeves. They don't have to string out this love triangle to keep us interested. We'll keep coming back.
Exactly. And I'm grateful that they just haven't just spooled this out for, it did a whole Remington Steele.
Yeah.
God, I just dated myself. I need to find a different show for her younger folks.
I was trying to spare you from not saying Remington Steele, but you did it.
I did it. I'm old. So, yeah. So they went for it, and they ended with them, obviously going to make love. So there you have it.
I hope so.
Yeah, but I enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I did too.
Let's talk about our favorite moments.
I have 3, and they're all between Spock and Chapel, but the number one moment is the moment that she pulls him back behind the room just before he's going to do the final ritual. And she could have done anything. She could have talked him out of going there. She could have said, I love you. She could have done anything. Because she realizes he put himself before her, she does it for him, gives him the shot, and gracefully bows out and lets him have his life. And it turns out well for her anyway, but that moment I just fell in love with. I loved it. Loved it.
For me, it was the battle between T'Pring's mom and Spock's mom. I mean, it was just a lobby of insults, and I just like the exploration and the parallels that a lot of people go through with these mixed families and things like that. It's not that big of a deal as it would have been 20, 25, 30, 44, last 20 years. I don't think anybody cares near as much as back then, but I love the exploration of that and how it feels to be in a situation where you're not accepted by another family. And I love the fact that Spock had a very good understanding of what his mother went through, and I thought that was a brilliant moment. Well, Steve, that concludes this episode of Energize, a Star Trek Strange New Worlds podcast.
Folks, if you want to, go check out our website. It's www.energizepodcasts.com. We've got all of our episodes there, a little history about me and Anthony. If you want to check out my book, The Deletion, it's available on Amazon. Just search The Deletion or Steve Truitt. And my audiobook comes out in late July. So we're going to do a week of free promotion, so I'll let you all know about it.
All right, everybody. I'll be right there for that. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Anthony McLemore.
I'm Steve Truitt. Live long and prosper.